Alright, so let's get started here. So welcome to LearnIT for you veterans that showed up. We also have a new guest here today. Pretty excited about that. For those of you that don't know, my name is Jay Rogers. I am with Server Side Up, a blog that's all about giving back and teaching people on how to solve technology problems, because that's what we do every day. So we decided to share that with the world. So today we're going to talk about Linux. How many of you have experience with Linux? All right. Clients or servers? Clients? What flavors? Mint? I haven't heard of Mint. There's so many. There's like over 9,000, it seems to be. So, well, with Linux, for those that don't know, Linux is an operating system. So you have like your Mac OS, you have Windows, and then you have Linux. Linux is open source, which means that the way it's developed is they create the software, but then they release the code out to the world for free. And then some other developer on the other side of the world takes a look at that code, and he goes through and he actually can change it, modify it, expand upon it. They have both desktop and server versions as well. Kind of like how we have Windows XP and Windows Server 2008. They have their own setup where it's more client-based and also server-based. And then it also has many flavors. I said that earlier. There's so many different kinds of Linux, which we'll be going through shortly. So the biggest reason that we want to answer as IT professionals is why do we care? Well, open source, it's free. It's free to download. So it saves a ton of money if you have it running well. Now that's a key word, running well, and somebody to support it. Support can be very expensive on Linux as well. It's completely customizable, so since it's open source, and if you know what you're doing, you can actually split that whole thing up and customize it the way to run on your watch, and get things done. But there's also risks to that as well, because you're going outside the support realm. But there's guys out there that can rebuild the Linux kernel no problem, and they can make it do whatever they want. But when it breaks, they know how to fix it. And there's also little hardware overhead. How many of you were really frustrated when like, let's say you want to install Server 2008 R2 and you need a machine with a lot of memory? How many of you tried to install that? Yeah, it's annoying. Well, with Linux, there's no hardware, like very minimal hardware overhead. What we're running today is you guys have the servers. They're only running about 512 megs of RAM, and that's being gracious too. I could probably chop that down to 384 and it'd still run. So, but the reason why there's no hardware overhead is there's no mouse in Linux. It's all command line. So we'll be going through that today. You have some notes there that I took. Actually, we have a Comp Sci 481 class. I don't know if it's still offered or not because the teacher moved on to a new position. But that class was all about web server management, and these are some of the notes that I had from there, so I figured to help you guys out. So what flavors do we have out there? Well, we have Red Hat Linux and CentOS. Red Hat is more enterprise level on their equipment or on their software. But we'll get into the difference between Red Hat and CentOS. CentOS is basically Red Hat. The way the commands are, the way the OS is structured. We'll get into that later on. And then we have Ubuntu, which is a very popular release nowadays. They made Linux very simple. So that's the thing about Linux is when you first look at it, especially coming from a Microsoft Windows Server environment, to Linux, it is so confusing. It is extremely confusing. So if you have minimal Microsoft knowledge right now, and you start learning servers on the Linux side, it might be a great advantage for you because you don't have to unlearn things, and really guide yourself towards learning Linux. And then they have SUSE, which is another popular release. They have OpenSUSE, which is a free version, and then they have actual SLES, which is SUSE Linux Enterprise. I don't know what it is. I'd have to take a look at it, but that's more their enterprise level release. So what does Linux provide for us? I don't know if you guys can read that. It's kind of here. Let me dim these lights. There we go. So what can you do with Linux? You can do pretty much anything and everything, comparable to Microsoft products. Somebody probably developed it for Linux, or at least some alternative. You might not be able to get all the features, but it's an extremely powerful web server. I forget the percentage, but I think it was like something like 80% of web servers were Apache driven. It could have been like 60 to 80. But it's also powerful for database server. How many of you have heard of MySQL? Yep. MySQL, completely free. Install that on Linux. You can build a very powerful environment. They also have some mail servers that are fairly popular. I'm not really too experienced with that. More on the Exchange side. Then we have FTP server. Sometimes I really like to run an FTP server off of a Linux box because it's a little bit more secure compared to Windows. One less thing that I have to install antivirus on. And it's also very good with Windows integration. So, kind of like on how Apple started to become really much more successful is when they finally opened it up and made it compatible with the PC market. Same thing with Linux. They understand that, and they actually allow, you can actually join a Linux machine to a Microsoft domain, and there's some pretty cool things that you can do with that. And then they also have their own Active Directory alternative. I think I have it listed on here. We have OpenLDAP that I've read. I've never really messed around with it, but you can look it up online and dive into it. I've also seen it run as a VoIP server. Anybody know what VoIP is? Yep, voice over IP. And I forget the name of the software distribution, but it was really cool. It's free. You download it, and next thing you know, you got your own little VoIP server. So there's a lot of things that run Linux. A lot of small devices like the WRT54G Linksys router. Those little blue ones. How many of you have one of those at home? They're extremely popular. Hi, Aaron. How you doing? So even those little small routers run Linux on it. And what I did yesterday, nuked out their firmware, and somebody developed their own Linux firmware that turned that $60 router into a $600 router. And now I'm able to get all these advanced features. So now moving forward, back to which flavor do you choose? Like I said, like CentOS is basically Red Hat, and then we have Ubuntu. We're going to start to focus more on the web server side because this is what I have more experience with. We have Red Hat. They are the leaders in Linux. They have a very solid enterprise platform. And then we have CentOS, which is pretty much the same thing. So the way Red Hat can charge, okay, remember it's Linux, it's open source, it's under the Creative Commons license or something like that. And they cannot sell the software. It is illegal for them to sell the software because Linux must be open source. So they have to structure their business where when they sell the software, when you get Red Hat, you have to purchase the support. So like you pay, it's like a really complicated pricing structure, but I think it was like $2,000, maybe $1,000 to $2,000, depending on what you're running per machine, that you'd have to pay for Red Hat. But that comes with like 3 years of support. They have 2 years of support, 1 year of support. So since they can't sell it and they're part of the Linux community, they have to take their source code and release that out to the world. So then what CentOS does is they just go through that source code and go through all their files and get rid of the Red Hat Linux, which is intellectual property of Red Hat, and then they just put CentOS on it, put their images there, and then just release it for free. So it's real cool because you can learn Red Hat by running CentOS, and it's pretty much exactly the same to Red Hat Linux. So it's pretty cool on that part. But then we have Ubuntu, which is more of an upcoming release. How many of you have heard of Amazon Web Services before, the Elastic Web Services? They are very heavy on Ubuntu. I think they're actually customizing their own Ubuntu image for the Amazon Web Services. So now the difference is, like, this is more, like, these are more enterprise level for Red Hat and CentOS. They're a little bit more of the slower guys to adopt, and Ubuntu's more of cutting edge. You know, like, oh, this is awesome, this is new, boom, they go with Ubuntu. But with cutting edge doesn't mean you're typically the most awesome guy out there, because that also means that you might have some issues on finding support, and also finding, if you don't have the support, it's also finding somebody who has the answers. So then we have, how do I learn? How do I go through and learn Linux? Where do you get started? Well, it's easy. It's free. Go and download it. You can use VMware Player. That's free. Download it on your laptop and run CentOS on it and build a server. So we'll be going through that today. Keep trying. If I had $1 for every Linux machine that I blew up, I would not have to be in school anymore. I'd have a very happy retirement somewhere else. So, and when you screw up, rebuild, rebuild, rebuild. Try to develop that list of practices, your steps, your procedures, and go through it and ask yourself, does it make sense to put this here? Does it make sense to put that there? When I was building a web server for Dan and I's business, 521, we needed to build all these servers, right? We needed to have a sandbox, a developer, and then we were going to build our own like production web server. And if you're building it from the ground up, you want all those to be standardized. So, okay, am I going to install? Well, obviously I'm going to install first, but am I going to upgrade now and then install NTP, which is network time, and all that other stuff? You have to just keep adding to that list. You'll constantly keep revising over and over again. But where can you learn? Obviously, you can learn here. Occasionally, I blog about it on Server Side Up, if you want to check that out. I'll be sure to post all these notes on there today and send out a link to you guys so that you can have what we have for handouts in electronic format. Official documentation is really helpful. Like, there's a very powerful community behind Linux, and they have very good documentation. Yes, it's dry, it's boring, it's bland, but when you run into a problem and you start reading through that documentation, it all starts to make sense. So it's very good to just go like CentOS documentation or like CentOS wiki. Usually they use wikis to manage all that. And then, of course, the all and infamous Google. Google your problems. There are millions of forums out there that I have stumbled upon and went through and reading their posts. Just make sure that whoever's trying to solve the problem makes sense. And another thing too, don't copy and paste code off the website and paste it in and then just run it. You're not going to learn that way. Actually, like print it off or put it on a second monitor and go through and type it, because then you'll understand and get used to typing Linux commands. So, all right, so let's go through and build it. But before we get there, does anybody have any questions? None? Oh, wow. Bright bunch today. So, what we'll do is I'll set up a Linux server, a CentOS server. We'll create it from the ground up. So, let me spin my laptop around. Alright, so here's all of our virtual machines running. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to one of these machines here. I just want to check the memory usage before I start cranking away on it. Okay, good. So I'm going to create a new virtual machine. We're going to call it Linux Demo. And we're running CentOS 5. They do have version 6 out, but it's fairly new. I haven't really cracked it open yet. But it is based off of Red Hat 6. So it's something that we'll definitely have to transition to. So let me get my virtual machine to tell it to boot from the ISO that I have on here. Then we do not need 2 gigs of memory. Alright, so we'll go ahead and power this machine on. Can you guys see that okay? Alright, so right here it just booted from the DVD. And so I can hit install or upgrade in graphical mode, just press the enter key, or I can install in text mode, and I have to type Linux text and hit enter. Well, we're not going to be noobs, we're going to be the geeks and run through the text mode. So I type Linux text, I press enter. Now this is a brand new machine, there's nothing on it, we just created it, and it will go ahead and load up. So here it's saying that found the CD. Now when you download Linux, it's going to come down in an ISO format or an ISO. That is a disk image. So what you need is you download the ISO image, then you go find like a free ISO burning utility. I forget the one that I use. Yeah, Paro ISO, I've heard of that one. Yeah, there's a couple out there. And then you just right-click on the file, burn to disk, and burn it to a CD. Or if you're running like a virtual machine, you can mount that ISO. Like, did you see how I went into the CD drive there? And I told it, instead of using the physical device, mount the ISO. And then I just chose the ISO image. So it created like a virtual CD-ROM drive. So when you download the ISO, they just want to make sure that it's not corrupt and it's verified. It's not going to like blow up your installation. So I'm just going to hit skip for the time being. And then it'll go through, install some more hardware required stuff. So here's where you can choose your language. I mean, it's very basic compared to, very similar to installing Windows. I mean, this isn't really crazy at all. This is warning me that, you know, it's going to start to mess around with the disk. Would you like to initialize this drive and erase all data? Yeah, that's fine. There's nothing on my disk. So here's where it's going to start to work on partitioning. Everybody knows what partitioning is, right? How many of you understand what partitioning is? Okay, for those of you that don't know, partitioning is on a disk. Remember, we have like files and folders underneath there, right? But what's the container that we need to store files and folders? You're not just going to throw them on the floor. You need to have a file cabinet. So a partition is kind of like your file cabinet that stores all those files and folders in there. And this is where we can define on how large we want our file cabinet to be. So you could have like a 500 gig drive, and you could create, you know, 5 100 gig partitions if you wanted to. And that's where we got into, remember, the best practices of installing servers. Put your logs on a different partition, and you know, put your data on another partition, your OS on another partition. That way, that if like your logs blew up, it wouldn't kill the whole machine. Your OS partition would still run. It'd only blow up that one file cabinet that you had. So we're just going to go ahead and hit remove Linux partitions, which it does to be safe, and go ahead and use that whole disk. So, are you sure you want to do this? Do you want to modify the partitioning layout? No, I'm good. Now this is where we can customize the network card. Remember, there's what's the first thing? What's our first step that we went through on building a Windows machine? We would install it, right? What was the second step? What's that? Yeah, well, yes, we could static IP or rename the server, but yeah, it's doing static IP right now. So let me go ahead, and you can activate the network card on boot. That's probably something that you probably always want on. I don't see why you wouldn't. And then remember, we have IPv4 and IPv6. I just arrow down and then press the space bar, and it selects that. So I'm going to say yes to IPv4. And then this is where we can do DHCP, or we can do a manual, where I'm going to do 10.0.7.1 with a subnet mask of, 16. That's what we're running on the inside here. So go ahead, press OK, and this is where we can put in our IP address information for gateway and DNS. And so this is where we can assign the actual host name, which is the name of the server. So I can call this Linux demo and hit OK. And then this is extremely important. Make sure you go through and select the right time zone. So America, Chicago. Okay, and then password. We're just going to do the standard PA $, $WRD1.
You say it's important. Is that because it's difficult to change it later?
No, it's not difficult. It's just you want your server to be on the same time as everything. Because imagine if you're running, let's say you're running server 2008, and then you had a Linux machine in there, and they're in the same rack or in the same, you know, like hypervisor host, but you're trying to troubleshoot an error and it's in a different time zone. So your logs are going to be different compared to, you know, when you join it up to a domain or something like that. So let's go ahead and press OK. Now this is where we actually customize the package selection. I should probably go grab my notes that I printed out for you guys so I can kind of walk through it. I thought I put that, yeah, so that's under important things to remember. Under package, we have, you know, it's pretty much a Linux installer. It's kind of like a .exe. What they use is Red Hat and CentOS. They use RPMs. I think it's called Red Hat Package Manager or something like that. So those RPMs are the .exes of Linux, of Red Hat Linux. So the thing that's really different about Linux, so I don't know if I should dive into this yet. Yeah, I should. Whenever you go to install a software, they have a centralized repository, it's called. Just think of it as like this massive database with all these programs in it. And they have like a CentOS official repository. So if I want to install Apache web server, they have an RPM for that I can download. And then if you look right underneath package there, we have yum, which means yellow dog updater modified. That is a package manager for Linux. And we use yum to call out to that repository, the CentOS repository, and download the latest version of Apache. So our command to install Apache would be yum space install space httpd, and it doesn't matter if Apache's on version like 2.0, 2.1, or 2.2, whatever is the latest version, it'll pull down the latest version and install it for you. So we'll go through that, especially when we go to build our web servers. Not this next weekend, not next week, but the week after. We'll be going through and building web servers, so that'll be real cool. And then under here we have the daemon, or some people call it the daemon, depends who you talk to. The daemon is a service that, or a component of the server that, is the software that's serving the clients. So you'll see that, like, remember when I said HTTPD? That's the, the HTTP, hypertext something, transfer protocol, there you go. D specifies daemon. So that is, the web server. MySQLD. So it's the MySQL server, it's the daemon for it, so it's the server. So that's always something to always kind of keep an eye on, because you're going to have clients for every for every daemon that you have. And sometimes you'll need both. Like if you're doing PHP, you can install the MySQL server, but you need to install the MySQL client on it as well, so it can communicate to itself. And then, yeah, and that's pretty much, we'll get into those other terms later on. So what I want to do is customize a package, the packages in here. They have desktop, and then they have GNOME and KDE. Those are just different versions of interfaces. I don't really pay attention a lot to that, because all of my Linux is server side. I don't use Linux for desktop. So I just go.
Are these things that once you select them, they're installed and that's what it is, and you can't really change it easily?
No, I think you can. Like you can install the desktop version and install a web server on it. It's no problem.
Okay.
So I've never done a transition like that. I don't think there would be too much of a purpose. Like who would want to go from like a server to a desktop? Maybe from a desktop to a server, but they probably just rebuild it. But so when I select server here, it's just going to recommend packages. So these are just like, oh, well, you want to run a server? Here's the packages that we recommend. But I select server to get most of the packages, and then I go through and deselect some, because there's a lot of goofy stuff that I don't really need that they install. So what I do is just tab down, and then I click Customize Software Selection. And I go through here, and this is where I can dive in, and I can hit F2 to see what's inside of like the DNS. So I don't need a DNS server on here, so I'm going to get rid of that. I can hit F2 here and go, what are all these services? I don't need any of that, any of those. But like FTP, I don't need right now. Mail server, network servers, news server. Actually, I should check on network servers. I don't know if I usually keep that installed or not. And then like web server will install later, and Windows file server will install later. So I just go ahead, hit OK. And it goes through it and it builds all of it. Okay, yeah, we'll save the log. And it just takes a list of those RPMs and it just installs it all. So those packages all make up Linux. They're like, there's a package for almost everything on how to customize a system. And the thing that gets really annoying is when packages have dependencies on each other. It's kind of like you go to install something on Windows and it goes, oh no, you need .NET Framework 3.5 or higher. You know, and it gets really annoying with that. So we'll go through and install. I'm actually going to, I don't know how long it's going to take. It might take only just a little bit. Does anybody have any questions while this is loading? Yeah, Andy.
Like, are you selecting the packages there? Is that similar to like selecting what roles you would want?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what it is. You know, what are you using the server for? And if you're running like FTP and you don't need it, and a mail server and you don't need it, it's just opening up a lot more security vulnerabilities. So more liability on your server. Eric, do you have a question? Why didn't we select the web servers? Because you know, we got to learn how to install it on our own. So sometimes it's just like a clean server, and you know, create it so that you're getting the latest stuff. Because this will install what's off the disk. This is not connecting out to the internet. So this is just pulling stuff from the disk, and then you can actually update your system or upgrade your system from like they have like, well, we're running the latest version. It's 5.7 of CentOS in the 5 series. But if I was on 5.6, I just run a command yum upgrade, and then it updates the whole system to 5.7. So I like to just have it clean and then install packages as needed, and I know it's the latest packages too. So any other questions? Okay. All right, well, I think what we'll do is pretty much after this, it'll bring up a prompt. I kind of want to show that to you guys, so we'll just dive into another topic, or not really another topic. We'll just kind of jump forward a little bit and then just come back. It's a very minor thing. So if you look on your sheet, we have SSH. Has anybody ever dealt with SSH before or heard of it? Ah, Mitchum. Where'd you use it?
Well, I haven't used it
Well, you've heard of it? Okay. So SSH is a protocol that Linux uses for pretty much its remote desktop connection. It's what we use to connect to a machine, and it's very secure. It's encrypted, and it also has machine identities on it as well. So if you connect to, like, let's say we connect to 521dimensions.com, and our web server's running there. Well, then let's say our DNS got hacked and they moved it to a new Linux server. If I connect to that new hacker server, it will actually throw up an error saying, hey, this machine identity is different. This could be a potential security breach. You know, so it's very smart. What's that? Oh yeah, Cisco, I'm sure they use it. You know, it's a very popular protocol. So we'll go ahead and reboot this machine here up on the screen. And then this will be, there's just an initial configuration that you can go through. So now this is called the Grub bootloader. That is kind of, it's the manager of where am I going to boot next. You know, okay, it loads the grub bootloader, and then it goes, okay, am I going to Linux? You know, you can actually boot Windows, or tell it to boot from Windows if you have Windows installed as well. So that's kind of a term to know. It's a critical thing for booting. And this thing will come up. It's taking it a minute. So here, see where it says like the OK thing here? This is where it's starting all of the services. And I put services on there as well. Software the machine hosts as a service to other clients or for its own function. So it's pretty much software that runs at boot. Okay? We need... yeah, there is one that failed. It could be just something that doesn't exist. Like it could be like a Bluetooth thing and it can't find Bluetooth. So... I noticed that last night. I was like, why is that one failing? But I don't think it's anything critical. Here it's like starting send mail, which is a mail server. But what they'll do is the way it works, if there's any errors, it will email the root user. It's kind of weird in how they do it compared to Windows. But it will install a mail server and then email itself to your inbox telling you that, hey, you got, a problem with so-and-so. And then you see like starting SSHD right here, and that's the SSH daemon. So that means that we can use SSH to get into the server. Mitchum.
Is vSphere open source?
vSphere open source. It is based off of Linux, but it's not open source. They pay. You charge. Or they release the product for free. They do not release the source code. Like, it's really weird. They're using the Linux layer to run it, but then they have their intellectual proprietary code, intellectual property that they own, where it does all the magic of vSphere. So ESXi is the thing that's Linux based, but this is, I'm connecting to it through a Windows client. Yep. The vCenter software is running on a Windows machine. So, well, I don't know what's going on with this thing. There it goes. And then here it's running the SendMail client, so it can boot itself. I must have not unchecked mail server. I thought I did. Sometimes I'll uncheck it and I'll still put it on there. It's really annoying. And then a thing to understand while this thing's still booting is I put on there is root. Root is very important to understand. Root is like the super user of the machine. So best practices is to never log in as root until you have to. But then we can also be talking about root as our root directory, our top level directory on the system. So it's like clicking on the C drive. You have a question, Eric? Yeah, we'll be doing root right now. Managing the system, making any system-wide changes, all that other stuff. So, all right, so let's take a look here. This is the setup agent that runs on first boot. So we can go in and take a look here. We have like our authentication. I gotta hit tab. There we go. And this is where we can join it to a domain or how to connect. We're okay with just a local thing. Then we have a firewall run tool, and they have this is very important. This is SE Linux. It's like some security suite that's installed. Its standards are insane, and when you're learning Linux, disable it, because SE Linux is like to like Department of Defense standards, and it is a pain in the ass. if you're trying to learn and try something, because you always have to do it this way or that way, or it's blocking some firewall port. So if you're learning, just go ahead, set it to disabled, and then set this to disabled at the bottom as well. And then you can just hit OK. Disabling the firewall is not recommended for production systems, but we're not making any revenue off these machines, so we don't really care. So, and then you can run your network configuration, but we can also dive into the services and tell what we want to start. So I like to tab through here because they usually have, like Bluetooth. What am I going to use Bluetooth on my server for? And that's all this other crap. So kind of go through here and take a look at what's running. I know we had SendMail running. I don't want that to run because that took forever to boot. SendMail, SSH. So go ahead, hit OK, and then we just hit exit. And voila! Welcome to Linux. This is as pretty as it's going to get. So we just put in root, and then our password, $PA $WORD1. If I typed it in right, sometimes it gets a little goofy because I'm remote connecting. Oh gosh.
Does this have things about typing?
Well, yeah, like sometimes, like since I'm going through a remote desktop connection and then sending it through the vSphere, sometimes when I hit shift, it will carry that shift over to the next character. So sometimes I just got to type it fast and then I get in. But I'm not too concerned because I don't really want to use this machine anyway. So I'm just going to close out of that and connect to one of my actual machines that I wanted to use today. I'm actually going to power this one off because we don't need it anymore. It was just to build and show you guys how to do it. So instead of going through the console, I'm going to take the first Linux server here. We're going to use PuTTY. And oh, Kev, you got a question?
Well, before we get further into that, when it comes to the SE Linux group, should we try to learn that more than anything? Is that what would be more useful?
You know what? I've never really messed around with it. Some guys I know say they just disable it, but they keep the firewall on. The firewall, I would say, is important to know, but you could lock down that server with a hardware firewall if you wanted to. Because if you disable the local firewall, you're even minimizing that system resource even more. The requirements to run that server. So it depends on the situation. I've never really messed around with SE Linux, but it's a pain in the ass, just to put it in a couple words. So now this is PuTTY. PuTTY is a free software, and this is a SSH client for Windows. So all I have to do is just type in Linux 1 and then hit open. And this is going to say, okay, the server's host key is not cached in the registry. Do you want to save it? So it's saying this is its secure footprint. So we're just going to hit yes. It just prompts you the first time. So if I log in as root, and password 1, there we go. I am now in a Linux machine. How many of you are impressed right now? Yeah, I wouldn't be too much impressed either. Okay, you install Linux, you go through, you log in, you're super excited, and then you get that. That's all you get. So let's go ahead. You guys are all logged in. Purple Jacks, right? Jake, you know what Purple Jacks mean? Okay. Are you in any IT classes?
Yeah.
Which one?
221,
Okay. Okay. All right. Cool. Awesome. That's great. That's the purpose of LearnIT, because I was so mad that I couldn't, get IT experience right out off, like the server stuff at like a lower level. I was like, okay, I want to skip this stuff and just get straight to the servers. So everybody's logged in Purple Jacks, right? So let's go ahead and download PuTTY. Go ahead and save it to the local XP machine.
This station is not logged yet.
Oh, do you need the username and password?
I guess.
Yes, make sure it's 3106 admin.
Lowercase?
Yep, admin, and then tab HH3106.
06. That's it?
Yep, HH. Oh, I'm sorry. Then hit this drop down.
HH.
3106, and then the drop down to the local machine.
Do you ever recommend who's the one to download it from?
It should just say download putty. This one here. This. Yep, that. It's like chark.net or something. So go to Google and type in putty. I'll pull it up on my screen here, so then Aaron can get caught up. And putty is a really cool tool, It's a exe. That's all it is. And you can run it on your desktop. You can run it in your My Documents. You can put in program files. It's a really helpful thing. So just go to Google. Aaron, you're logged in now?
Yeah. Am I going to have to install it?
Yep. So you're on Purple Jacks, correct?
What is
Purple Jacks down on the bottom.
Does this mean that I'm being taken off the internet and I'm on the fake one now?
Oh no, you're on the real internet. So let's go to Google. Load up Google. You should have an IP address. And then we just go to Putty. And then we have Putty right here. Awesome killer website, hey? Get used to it. Linux guys are programmers, not web designers. So, but you know what? It works. So go to download Putty. And then we want putty.exe right here. So just go ahead, click that. It downloaded it for me here. I already downloaded it the other day. You can double click on it and run it wherever you want to run it. But I already got my Putty open. I'm actually going to close out of this one and we'll go through reconnecting. So you got Putty, Aaron?
For some reason, Google isn't coming up, even though apparently I am online.
Don't tell us that we have to use Bing. There we go.
That works. This does not.
There it goes.
Now it does.
Alright, so go to Putty. And then go to the download page right there. And then putty.exe. And then save it. Save it to the desktop. There you go.
It's asking you to configure it when it's running. Do you want to run SSH?
Yep, we'll go through that. Alright, cool. So everybody's got this screen open, the Putty configuration. Okay. What we'll do is number off. I'm 1.
2, 3, 4, 5,
6,
7, 8, 9, 10.
You got your own server. Alright. So, did you build a CentOS box? 5.7?
I couldn't find the 5.7 on
Well, if you want, we got extra machine if you want to just use this one. Just quick download Putty. Okay. All right. So, and the stuff, you have CentOS 5, yeah, that'll be the same stuff that we're using today. We're not doing anything complicated. All right, so what you guys can do is just go ahead and type in Linux here. Oops. Linux, and then the number. So I'm 1. You're going to be a little bit different than me. And then just press open. And then you're logging in as root. Oops. Root. And then your password is $WORD1. Everybody got that? For how many of you guys have that issue? Everybody? What the heck? Try Linux your number dot learn it dot local. You might not have appended the DNS suffix. That works? Alright. Guys almost gave me a heart attack. It's Friday. It's against the law to do that. So, this is your login. So we have root, and then it's going to ask you for a password. $PA $$WORD1.
Okay, I'm not sure on mine. There appears to be trying .learnit.local.olc.uww.edu.
Oh, that's because try it again. Try it one more time.
Oh.
They have a group policy thing that pushes out that the DNS suffix will be this. .local.
Local, and just leave it at that?
Yep, and hit open. There you go. And hit yes. Is everybody logged in? Eric, you okay? You got it? Alright. Then just type in or Linux. No, Linux, and then your group number or your number .learnit.local. Then hit open. Then hit yes. That's that. Remember, it's saying it's connecting to it. It's never connected to it before. It's saying this is its security hash. Are you sure you want to? Do you want to cache these for next time? And then you just hitting yes. So if your server was a change and you're connecting to linux5.learnit.local, it would warn you if it was a different machine. So in case it's a security breach. So everybody good? We're logged in. We have the prompt. Okay, get your pens ready. You're going to be writing down a lot of commands. There are some commands that I gave you, but these other commands are commands that you're going to repeat over and over and over again. I got markers. Who needs a marker? I got a pen here, but I need my pen. Huh? We got 2 pens back there, if you don't want to use a marker. Right behind you, Derek. And then Kevin needs one as well. There we go. Look at that. Oh. Not my marker yet. Oh, wow, they're not smashed. Okay. All right. And if you need paper, feel free to walk up to that printer there, yank out the bottom tray, and use it away. You guys paid for it. So, and you can also use the back of the sheet. So how many of you would know where to even start with this prompt? Oh, yeah, help question mark. I don't know if that works in Linux or not. We'll go over... Oh, it does. I never tried that. But it's saying you have to put the command in there. So, where would we get started? Well, let's learn how to navigate the OS. That would probably help out a lot, correct? So, we need to find out where we're at. I'm going to clear this screen out. So that's a command that you could write down. Clear. Watch what clear does. Oh, pretty self-explanatory, hey? So, we have to figure out where we're at on the system. So let's go ahead and type in PWD, which stands for Print Working Directory. And it shows that my current directory that I'm in right now is... Oh, you guys can't see that. That's really bad. Here, let me move over my window for you guys. Here, is that better? Aaron, how did you increase the font size on yours?
Go to,
Change settings?
yeah, change settings,
Appearance, change. Apply. There we go. Is that better? Is that easier to read? All right. So right here we have PWD and root. That's actually a little bit too much for me on the screen.
Yeah, you could probably go a little smaller and just make it bold or something.
Oh, okay. There we go. That's perfect. All right. So PWD, Print Working Directory. So the current directory that we are in right now is root/root. Remember, what's the difference between root as a directory and root as a user and root as a folder? This is the user directory for root, which root is located in the root directory, which is above it. Root is the slash. That is the top level directory. So to look inside of this directory, we can type ls.
This isn't the top level though, right? This is a subdirectory.
This is okay. Inside at the top level, let's say we clicked on the C drive. There's a folder in there called root, and we are in that folder. Okay, so we're one level down.
Did they choose the name root just to be confusing here?
Yes, it's Linux. It is extremely painful to learn. It is very difficult to learn compared to other things out there. But once you get the hang of it, it is absolutely amazing. If you understand Linux before you graduate here, you will be worth a lot of money. They're like Linux guys out there are hard to find, and with hard to find, that means they're getting paid a lot of money. So like strategies of, remember we had the Red Hat Linux where you'd pay for support, and then we had CentOS. Well, that means the company strategy. Okay, Red Hat, I'm just going to outsource my support. If a system breaks, I'm just going to outsource it. But you still have to pay somebody inside to understand your environment, and then you have a Red Hat specialist come in and fix it all for you. But then CentOS, you might, instead of just paying for support, you might just go free and run your whole business off of that, but you have to pay somebody in the salaries to support your systems. So you can find a job working with CentOS, and you could get paid some pretty hefty penny for that. And if you understand both Microsoft and Linux, it's even better. So keep driving forward. Just get past that first hurdle, and the rest of them are easier. They'll all start to connect. So what we did, our first command, pwd, we're in the root user folder. And then we did an ls command, which displays or lists all the files inside of here. I think it'll even show folders too. We'll test that out. So we have a config file, we have the log file from our install, and then there's also a system log file. So let's change directories, right? What do you think the change directory command would be? CD. CD space, and then where you want to go. So let's just put in a slash. And you can also see on here, notice that we have the squiggly line, right? Yeah, the tilde. We have the tilde right here. And then we have the slash here. It's showing where we're at. So that's a good thing to keep an eye on. So we're logged in as root on this host, and this is where we're at right now. So we can go ahead and hit ls, and notice that the color's changed. Blue means directories. On the important things to remember sheet down at the bottom, there's some important directories to know that are good to understand where Linux puts everything. So, like USR, you would think that that would be the user folder. No, it's like some universal system resource. So, I believe a lot of applications are stored in there. Here, let me change into that. Yeah, so there's a lot of libraries and everything is located in there, but we'll dive through some other ones here too. We have Etsy. It's where all of our services are. Remember what services are? That's like our Apache web server, MySQL. We have bin and sbin. One thing that we did not go over yet is bash. That is the shell that Linux uses. It manages all the commands. So what we're looking at right now is the bash shell of what we see here. This is all bash. So all of our commands are stored within, we have sbin here, and then we have bin here. So these commands are all located in there. And then we also have dev, which is where our devices are. And where's dev? There's dev right here. Dev is where, like, if you're going to mount a CD-ROM drive, or if there's another hard drive, that's where they're located. So that's Linux on kind of like its root file structure level. So let's go ahead and let's do CD home. And now we're in the home directory, right? We can check that by doing pwd. Okay?
Why does the root directory display a tilde instead of saying root?
Oh no, when we were in root, it had this slash. That means root.
No, the directory that we were first in.
Oh, because I'm the user. If I do cd tilde, it takes me to my user folder.
Oh, what's the 2D?
Oh, so then cd ... means change to the directory above that.
It might be useful to just kind of quick go over the logic with that, single dot to double dot.
Oh, okay, yeah, so these are...
You see it in URLs all the time.
Yeah, so in the bash shell, you have, so cd ... is just pretty much like a variable for whatever's above. And then there's single dot, which is the current directory. So I could do /, and then...
The relative position.
Yep, exactly. So if I was in the root folder and I did /, home, and then I put in a command there, well, that's a bad example. Let's say we're inside of a home directory, correct? And then inside that home directory, I had a configuration file, like myfile.cfg. To execute it, I could do /cfg, and it would run it. Or I could put in bash. Oh, you're not really going to execute a config file. I'm trying to think of a good example on the whim. It's just whatever directory you're in. A single dot is whatever directory you're in. A double dot is the directory above you. So when I do cd space .. it's going to take me up one. You can also do, let's say we had like file 1 and then file 2. I could hit like rm, which is remove, and then file, and then star, and that wildcard character will get rid of anything that's named file and then has anything after it. So it's going to get rid of both file 1 and file 2. So that's kind of on how it works. We'll go through all that. All right, so let's change to where were we? We're in the home directory. So if we do pwd, we're in home. Now let's create a directory, mkdir, And you can actually be in a directory and create a folder in another directory. So even though that we're in home, we can create a folder throughout the whole system. So let's do /tmp /learnit and then press enter. Okay? So now we created the TMP was already created, but we created a LearnIt directory within that TMP, which is our temporary folder for the system. So we can change to that directory by doing cd space /tmp /learn, or put in LEA, and then this is a really awesome thing to know. Press the tab key and it will fill it out. It's really awesome. But
Because there's only one.
yep, there's only one. But if I do, let's say I had like mkdir /tmp learnit 1. So now I have two that are very similar, but they're different. If I do cd /tmp /lea and then I hit tab, it will fill out LearnIt. But if I hit double tab, it will show on what are my options. So does everybody get that? What I did there? So I can choose LearnIt or I can choose LearnIt 1. Notice that it's not completely filling out the command. So we just have to fill it in 1 or whatever. So we're just going to do this. You should see LearnIt here. Everybody have that? So let's go ahead and create some files. So on one of the sheets here, the helpful commands, I thought I put touch. And touch is a useful command to just test out to make sure that file permissions are set correctly or something like that. So it will just simply create a blank file. So you can do touch myfile.txt. And what's the command that we use to test it out to see if it works? Or to search for or list what's in there? Yep, ls. So if we do ls, my file's in there. So let's create a folder in there. mkdir my folder. And then ls. See how it's different? The files are in white and the directories are in blue. In putty. That might be different. Might be different on the shell. Or like the actual console. But putty's white and blue. So let's create another command. We're actually going to open up an application right now. You have two text editors. You have Nano, N-A-N-O, write that one down. And then you have VI. But they also have Vim, which is VI improved. So if you're going to use either one, I prefer to use Nano. Sometimes Nano gets really emotional and we'll start throwing random letters and characters. I don't know why. I always have that issue whenever I'm like remote connected through something. It must be something with like, and I'm also setting up in like a really stretched out wireless environment. So it could be that the wireless is dropping in and out. But Vim is a much more low level text editor. And which one do you think is more friendly to use? The one that's at a higher level. Usually when you're talking about using stuff, things at higher levels are usually a little bit more friendlier because the lower level you get, the more computer lingo you get into. So let's explore around with both of them. So I don't know. Which one do you guys want to learn first? The easy one or the hard one? Let's do the hard one first. So if we put in Vim space myfile.txt, everybody should have this screen. So down at the bottom we have myfile.txt. We're at the 0. We're on line 0, column 0. I don't know what these mean. It might be like certain pages or something like that. So if I start to type in, and I'm pressing M, nothing's happening. You're going, why? Why must my keyboard fail? No, right now you are in viewing mode. So on your note page, create like a section for Vim, because these are commands specific to Vim. And Vim is really good to know.
Are there a lot of differences between Vi and Vim, or is it?
V and Vim, not really. Vim allows, it's a little bit more readability stuff. I think it adds colors. So when you're reading like an Apache configuration, things will be colored. It's easier to read. And it will also, if you're working in because these configuration files could be thousands and thousands of lines. So it's nice because Vim, if you save it and you're working on it, chances are you might have to come back and adjust it. And instead of scrolling down all the way, Vim will remember where you last saved, what line number you were on. So it's really helpful. Sometimes I like to use Vim, sometimes I use Nano. It depends on which case I'm using. And the reasons why I use Nano I probably can do in Vim, but I know how to use Nano, so I just use it. So, so let's go in, and we have to press I to go into insert mode. And notice down here at the bottom, we have insert mode. Everybody got that? Oh gosh, this thing's gonna start dinging away. Alright, so just to refresh your minds, just in case the brain went somewhere else over the break. So what we can do is we can do vim myfile.txt. Now this is another helpful thing. Watch this. Notice that that's the last command that I typed in. I can hit the up arrow and navigate all of my previous last commands, and the down arrow to go all the way down. So that's a helpful command or helpful thing inside the bash as well. So now we open up the file through Vim, okay? Now what we want to do is go into insert mode. So add I as your go into insert mode. And this is where we can start to type. You know, hello world. This is my first text file in Linux. Okay? Now to get out of whatever mode that you're in, you can look down at the bottom here. You have insert mode. Press the escape key and that will disappear. Okay? You got that? And then to save it, you hit colon, and you have to be outside of your insert mode, colon, WQ, exclamation point. So what that means, yeah, Aaron, your facial expression was priceless. So to save the file, colon, WQ, exclamation point. Yeah, pretty messed up, right? What's that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I always add the exclamation point. So we have colon, which is issue some sort of command, write, quit, exclamation point, which means overwrite it.
I think that you need that exclamation point if you're trying to bypass a warning, like if you were editing
just
and want
force,
to quit without
just
writing.
no. WQ exclamation point will force. I don't care. Just save it. That's what it's saying. And no matter what happens, just save the file. So I always add that. It's a good thing to have if you know that your stuff's right. So press enter, and there you go. So we wrote the file, we quit, and we forced it. So okay, whatever. I know it's a file of theirs already. Don't prompt me about overwriting it. Just save it. Okay. So now what we can do to open that back up is we can hit the up arrow and go back into it, and notice that it is saved. If you're just looking at it and you didn't make any changes, hit :Q, and then just press enter. Now we didn't make any changes, so it's not getting emotional. But if all of a sudden I start to type and I'm like, oh man, I screwed up, you'd have to hit the escape key, get out of insert mode, :Q, exclamation point, and it will just bail out. So now let's take a look at Nano. Nano, My File, tab. So it fills it out for you. And Nano's a little bit more friendly. Yeah, this one's a little bit easier. This is why I like to use Nano. But Nano might not be installed on other machines. And it might also get really goofy like what I had, where my bandwidth was semi-low, and it was causing, like, I would hit the P button, and then like 8 P's would appear inside the text document. I think it was a network issue. But Vim worked fine. So sometimes it's better to use Vim. So as you can see down at the bottom here, let me adjust my my text. I think 12. What's that? To the. All right, yeah, we'll go over that. Just one second. I gotta adjust. I want to adjust this because it's not displaying correctly. Appearance change. I think it's because it's in bold. Okay, so it's a little bit better. But if you look down on the bottom here, we have get help, write out. I don't know what this one is. I never used it. Huh? Read file. Okay, so you guys have this on your screen. Okay, so you know, that's where we can look at. Those are the keyboard shortcuts. So one thing that I find helpful is the where is. That's like the search. So if I hit Control W, it says search, and then if I just type in, let's type in text, and then I press enter, it takes me to where it found text. And this is really helpful if you're searching for something in like a 10,000 line piece of configuration or some other code. So if we want to make changes to this, you simply just go over here and start typing. So space, Nano is much easier to use. And notice that it up here it has modified up in the upper right hand corner. And then to save this, I just hit Control O, which means write out. And it's going to ask you file name to write. I want to keep it myfile.txt. And then down at the bottom it says wrote 2 lines. And then to get out, I just hit Control X. Now, how many of you want the whole, oh snap, I need to get out of this, you know, trick, you know, like you need the abort button if you're running a command? Well, in Linux, I'm sorry, what's that? Yeah, power button. Yeah, power cable is always the ultimate last resort if the power button doesn't work. But in Linux, it depends on what you're using. Draw like this square on your paper so that we can list a couple commands. There's going to be about 4 or 5 of them. Things that will cancel Linux commands. Control C, Control X, Control Z, Control D, Q, or escape. Those are some helpful things if you're trying to like, oh crap, I need to get out of here. Control Z, Control X, Control C, Control D, or escape or Q, which will get you out.
Does control break never do anything?
You know, I never really tried control break. That I would throw that on there as well because that's a very common. That's a common thing. It works in Windows.
A list of things to try.
Yeah, yeah. Oh shit! So, all right. So now let's take a look at some of our other commands. The thing that stinks about navigating these is you have to open up some goofy program, and who wants to open up a text editor if you just want to read it? So on here we should have I thought I had on there. It should be less and more. Is it somewhere on there? Less is on there. Okay. So the purpose of less is, I don't know. When I took my Linux class, there was a lot of like humor in 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 the commands, and I say humor that way because it's very dry Linux humor. Like, who knows what PHP means? What does it stand for? It's what? No, it's like something. It's like PHP something like hypertext. I think it's PHP hypertext processor. I think that's what. Yeah, hypertext preprocessor. So there's a lot of like uh, like acronyms inside of acronyms. What's the name for that?
It's called Unix humor. It's not funny.
No, yeah, it's not funny at all. But like when I was in this Linux class, everybody was cracking up, and I was like, oh man, So like less.
Like recursive acronyms.
Yeah, recursive acronyms. So less is another one of those humor things, humor in quotes, of it's all about you want to see less on your screen, and everybody started to laugh about that. So if we want to say less myfile.txt, whoops, it will pull up this thing and show you less on that screen. And that's really nice because if we had a ton of lines, let's see if I can pull up an example. Let me switch to my root home file. Remember we had that install log? So if I hit less install, see how I can browse this with my arrow? I'm going up and down right now. So that's nice if you just want to view something. And then to get out of less, just press Q and it will close out. So let's go back to our tmp/learnit. Okay, so we have myfile.txt and my folder. So how many of you came to the file permissions one? Okay, good, because this is where for the next 20 minutes or so we're going to crank out file permissions. Mitchum. What screen?
Yeah, how do we get out of the last screen?
Oh, hit Q. Remember? It's in that list of, oh shit, I gotta get out of here. Buttons. Got it? Here, let me come take a look at your screen. What are you doing here? Oh, okay. Save, modify, deleted buffer. We're just going to hit no. Alright. So, we have file permissions. Everybody pull out the handout with chmod. You'll have this. This is the most helpful thing I've ever typed in my life. I'm going to actually pull it up on my Google Docs as well. I forget which one it's under. I think it might be this one. Okay. So chmod, very important on this part here to understand. To view the file permissions, you can do an LL. And these are our file permissions. I'm actually going to do this from the screen, so I don't have to walk back and forth. We have, okay, so this is saying it's a directory, read, write, execute, read, no write, execute, read, no write, execute. Now, why is it repeating itself? And then we have root, and then this here, which I believe is file size, and then the last time it was modified. So why is it repeating itself? Well, if we take a look at the chmod paper, remember we had read, write, execute. Read, write, execute. Read, write, execute. And depending on where you're at, we'll give you the value of what we're looking at. So in this column, we have U, G, and W. Anybody have a guess what U means? User. G, group. W,
And the
world. Yep. So you can view who the owner is, the user owner, the group owner, and then anybody who is anonymous. So if we wanted to, like we have the default chmod, and if we pull up our other sheet with the helpful commands, I do not have chmod on there. Chmod is, I forget what it stands for. It's change, let me Google it real quick. Chmod. Yeah, change mode. That's what it means. So it's going to change chmod, changing file permissions. That's what it is. So it's chmod space what we want to set it to space which file or folder. Okay? So let's take a look here. So we have these files and folders here. So let's add some users. So how we do that is we do user add space the username, and that's under your helpful Linux commands. So I'm going to name this Joe. So I added a user for Joe, but Joe does not have a password yet. So to do that, you do PASSWD. Write that one down. I don't know if that one's on there. Oh yeah, it is. I got it down there, right underneath user add. PASSWD, not WORD, and then the username on who you want to set the password for. So Joe. Mitchum, this sheet. Helpful commands. Got it? Alright. So PASSWD Joe. And now it says new Unix password. So let's create a password for Joe. I'm just going to use password. All lowercase. Bad passwords based on a dictionary word. Don't worry. Password again. Password, all authentication tokens updated successfully. So now we created a user for Joe. And now we can create a group as well. So to create group, it's on the second table of important things to remember. This one here, the shorter list. We can create a group. Group, add, student. So now we have added student as our group. Okay? So let's go back to, or let's figure out what directory I'm in. PWD. Okay, I'm in TMP LearnIT. So I'm there. So let's do LS or an LL, which will show the same thing. One thing I should note that you guys should write down, watch this. If I do touch.hidden, and I do an ls, notice that it's not there. LL, still not there. But if I do an LL space dash A, notice the hidden file. You know how in Windows you can right click on a file and set it to hidden? Has anybody ever seen that? You can right click, go to properties, and say set it to hidden. The way you hide files in Linux is you put a dot before it. So dot hidden is a hidden file. You can put it in front of a directory too. So dot hidden, so mkdir dot hidden dir. If I do LL, it's just showing anything that's not hidden. LL space dash A. And there's my hidden file, and then my hidden directory. Okay? So, how do I remove files? rm dot hidden. Are you sure you want to remove it? Yes. rm dash hidden dir will not remove it. There's another command that you have to use to remove it. You have to put the dash R, which I believe means recursive. So rm space dash R dot hidden dir. Are you sure you want to remove it? Yes. And then press enter. So now if we do LL space dash A, those folders and files are gone. So, random kind of tangent there, but I think that's important to cover before we start diving into this stuff. So we created a user Joe, and we created a group called student, okay? So let's create a folder for students. mkdir student. Students, I'm sorry. So if we do an ls, it shows a quick brief what's in there. So I got the directories highlighted in blue, which I know is hard for you guys to see. Did I make it better? There. We only need one set of legs. Change settings, colors, zero. Let's try this 187. There we go. Is that easier?
You need to make it more intense.
Like yellow?
Well, it's brighter. Yellow would be cool. Blue would have been fine.
What's yellow in RGB?
Red and green.
Red and green. Oh, I can just choose it. Oh, they made it easy. How's that? There we go. Okay. Alright. So now it's in yellow. So we do know it is a putty thing on how it communicates. So we have my file.txt, my folder, and then we have students, okay? So what we can do is an LL, just lists the visible files and folders. And we have, these are the permissions here, which is read, write, no execute, read, and read. So in chmod terms, read, write, read, read. If we take a look here, this is like special, this left column here, this set UID, set GID, that explanation's down here. So we'll go through that. But what did we have? We had read, write, read, read. So read, write, 4 plus 2 is 6. Read, 4, read in this column is a 4. So our chmod value for this is 644. That is the default chmod values for Red Hat. For directory is 775. So by default, when I created that, if we do read, write, execute, read, execute, read, execute. We take a look here. Read, write, execute. 4 plus 2 plus 1, 7. Oh, wait. Why is that? I guess in CentOS it might be a little bit different. It might be 755. So this one here is 5, because we only have read and execute. And then this one is read and execute as well. Is everybody getting how that works? Raise your hand if that does not make any sense. Okay. And then if we were to add this column, it would be its own thing. So, so we have R, read files, W, write files, X, execute files. Set UID. Executable is run with privileges of the owner. Set GID, executes with privileges group owner, not user. And file is preserved in a high-speed buffer. Okay, I think SVTXT, that one was a little bit older for older systems. I think that was more for caching, or not really caching. Yeah, it could be caching. It was more for file performance. Set GID. So when it goes to execute the file, it will run it in this G column. Okay, that's important to know, especially when we get into web servers as Apache, because Apache will have its own group and how it's going to execute. And then we have this one, set UID, and if that is flagged, that it will run it as the owner, which is the the actual user. So a chmod could be like 4755, and it will run it as the user. Or if we want it as the group, it could be a 2755, and it will run it as the group owner. So now, this group owner, user owner, let's take a look at that. So here's where we can change the ownership for the students folder. So if we do, I think it's CHGRP, I don't know if I have that, yep. And then we have the group name first. Okay, this is on that second page. So we created student, and then we have the folder students. Now when I do LL, notice that we changed the ownership of the group ownership of that directory right here. So this is the group of who's the group owner. Okay? And I forgot to say as well, whenever you add a user, it will create a user for them, but it also creates its own group for them as well. I forget the exact reason why, but it's never best practice to add, because you can add a user to that individual's group, but it's not recommended. It'll complicate things. It's always better to just create another group and then add 2 users to it if you need it. So then we can also change the ownership of the file, because right now root owns the file. Students, anybody in the student group owns the file, and then we also have permissions that the world can read and execute it, but they cannot make changes to it. Student has access to the file. They do not. I shouldn't say they own it. They only have read and execute permissions to access as well. So everybody can decipher this.
What do these mean for the directory? It makes a lot of sense for a file.
It's kind of like what we were doing with the Active Directory, where if we wanted to lock out a user or a group of users from that folder, or have a specific group of users to be able to access that folder, then you just create a group for them and then assign them access to that folder. That way we can have like sales, HR, all that other stuff in the same folder, but they won't be able to see it because they don't have access to it.
What does it mean to be able to execute a directory?
this will do the, I believe it will do the inheritable permissions. So like executing a file, like opening a program, or...
So it has no bearing on the directory itself?
Yeah, so if we look
Allow
here,
files to be set to execute inside.
if we look here, what it means for files, read, execute, and then the directory. Okay, so this is the follow the in node. That's the term that my professor used to the data. So that means that you can go into the data and actually get access to the list, or you can add delete entries. So in order for you to have read, I believe you need to have X. I know 755 is a very common directory, and it's known to be fairly secure for most things. So 755 is a very popular chmod value that you'll see. Never 777, unless if it's required. Caching directories may need that. On internet-facing stuff, caching directories, but 777 is very dangerous because if it's 777, that means the whole world is wide open. That's like setting a permission to everyone on your Active Directory servers. So, let's take a look back at our Linux here. So if we want to change the user, I think it's chuser. Oh no, it's chown. That's what it is. Yeah, that's what I call it, chown. Everybody calls it that. So change, and then we want this to be Joe, and then which directory? Student. Oops. Change the ownership. Yep, I put in student, not students. So we're change, change, OWN, owner. So we're changing the owner from for students, so now that Joe owns the directory, not root. And student has access to it. So, now we got our feet wet with changing owners and everything. Now let's change the permissions for that folder. chmod space 775. Oh, whoops, I pressed enter already. And then students. I can't type. So if we do an LL, notice that the permissions change. So now Joe has full access, student has full access, and the world can still read and execute that folder. I'm not sorry about read and execute. They can still read the contents of that folder and get into that folder. So let's do chmod 750. Oops, I keep forgetting to add our directory. That would probably help. So let's do LL, and now our directory changed again. So everybody got that? Okay? So let's take a look at what happens when we go inside the students folder. So we do cd space st tab, and it will work. And let's do touch file1.txt. And if we do an LL, what the heck? It's not working. But the problem is we're logged in as root. So what we can do to view or to switch user as Joe you put SU space Joe, and now you're logged in as Joe in the student's directory, PWD. So we do ls, and let's do touch file2.txt, ll. And now it adds Joe as the owner because he created the file. So that's just one thing to keep an eye out. Whenever you're creating files, it will create it as that user by default. So to switch users back to root, SU space, I think it's just dash, and now you're going back to root. And then CD, TMP, what else do we have? LearnIT, LS, CD, students. So, everybody getting how to navigate? Are you getting pretty comfortable? How many of you learned something today? All right, that's what I like to see. If there's anything that pops up, I will email you. One command that I do want to demonstrate is the man command. It's not as exciting as you think. You can't use it on your girlfriend or anything. But and even though that you do log in as root, you can't tell her other commands as well. But man is manual. So we could do man, and then let's say we have a command that we don't know. Let's do, what's a command that we didn't go over today that would be cool to look at? I don't know, I think we covered all the basic ones. So let's do like man pwd. And voila, it brings up pwd, name, pwd, print name of current working directory, description, prints the full file name of the current working directory, and here are the arguments. So you can put pwd space dash capital L. Oh, one thing that we forgot to talk about is Linux is case sensitive. So there's a difference between mkdir, capital M, lowercase y folder, and then lowercase m, like the whole thing lowercase, so lowercase m y folder. So be sure that even whenever you're running an Apache Linux server or a web server, that your URLs, if you have like capital F for like file1.txt, you have to type that in the URL exactly on how it is on the web server. So you might want to lowercase everything as well. But use the man command. It is extremely helpful. And to get out of this screen, you'll see the colon down in the lower left. Just go ahead and press Q. So, any questions? Feel free to contact me.